Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from FrameCyber, and for this piece, I'm sitting with a very long-time friend of mine, Jennifer Bayuk, who's been in cybersecurity and risk management for so long. We've known each other a long time. How are you doing, Jen?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, is it decades? Wow.
Yeah.
Good heavens. But a lot's changed in those decades, right? In cyber and risk. When we first started, it was kind of a little niche thing.
Yes.
Now it's big business, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. When we were at Bell Labs and I was working on cybersecurity in the public switch phone network, there were people in my group who left to go to IT startups because they thought security was a niche field and they would not go far if they stayed in security.
They should have followed us. We knew what we were doing. We
are.
stayed with the field.
Yeah.
So you got into security in AT&T. Tell me a little bit about your personal journey, your career, and how you got into all this.
Well, I was in expert systems at Bell Labs, and they had a lot of needs for replacing all of the people who had built the phone network. They were starting to retire and they were trying to capture their knowledge and put it in expert systems. Automate it, yes. And at that time, there was a large outage in the phone network in the Martin Luther King Day, 1990.
January 15th, 1990.
Right.
4Es went down.
Yes.
I remember it.
Yes, they were down for a long time.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people at that time that thought that there could be a hacker bringing the network down.
A virus.
They couldn't explain it. It was they couldn't recover very easily. They had to shut the whole phone network down and bring it up very gradually before they realized it was actually a programmer bug in a for loop that was overloading the network. But management at the time realized there was a very real possibility. And AT&T was the most hacked company in the world at that time because people were getting free phone service by hacking the network.
Yeah.
And so they started a group and
Just
devoted
Frank
it to
Iana
security.
started that, right?
Yes,
Right? Yeah.
I worked in Iana's lab.
Yeah.
And so I brought my expertise in expert systems and started to look at intrusion detection in the public switch phone network. And other people came with me from various places looking at hardening the operating systems. You were doing a lot of work on that as well for other reasons. And so we gelled. We were like really the first group that was doing things like policy and awareness.
Yes.
Beautiful posters we had on the wall. You know, secure horror stories are not just fairy tales.
I remember.
Yes. So from there, I got recruited out to Pricewaterhouse to be on their cybersecurity, well, it wasn't cyber then, information security risk management practice, and you could do consulting and auditing in the same field. So that was a great experience. It's like getting your MBA in business by working as an auditor and a consultant for really big technology companies. Right. But it also means traveling almost 100% of the time.
You're probably on an airplane all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I graduated from there after my 2-year Pricewaterhouse MBA program. And AT&T at the time split up into Lucent, NCR, and AT&T.
Right.
There was a very small spin-off company that not too many people knew about at the time called AT&T Capital Corporation. And people from the controller's office, whom I knew from working with corporate security and audit at AT&T, came over to be the management at this company. They owned all the loans and leases for the other 3 companies, and the 3 companies did not want any one of those companies to keep that business, so they spun it off on purpose.
96, 97 time frame?
Yeah, to securitize all those loans and leases. So our mission was to put ourselves out of business by selling the portfolio.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
So I was the head of IT audit.
Really?
And I traveled through all the operations, making sure that we were actually, processing all of these things correctly. Worked with the people who were building the securitization systems and farming them out to Wall Street. And when we accomplished our mission, we sold the shell of a company to an insurance company who came to internal audit and said, not really sure what you do. And they renamed us to quality assurance. So rather than work in quality assurance when I thought I was working in risk management, I left and went to Wall Street, where I ended up as a security architect in the early days of the internet, when people were building their first websites that actually had transactions and not just phone books. And we did 3-tiered architectures, and I became the head of the largest security group and the most senior person working in security after 9/11, when the Electronic Crimes Task Force came to all the big financial companies in New York and said, "Who is your chief information security officer?" And lo and behold, everybody pointed to me.
Right.
So that's, many of us in the financial industry got the first titles of chief information security officer.
Bear Stearns,
yeah, this was at Bear Stearns. And so I ended up with, through reorganizations, I had accumulated a lot of portfolio departments and products that had anything to do with security, and it became more of a real executive level position at the time. Before that, it was just like the security manager and maybe had a security operations guy. It wasn't really the architecture of the departments and the technology and things had not been planned. So it was a very interesting time, and I sat and thought how I'm going to run this organization. I suddenly, started getting calls from the business. How do we deal with this privacy requirement? Things that were anything to do with security ended up coming my way. So I engaged a lot of different departments: HR, legal, risk management, and of course all the CIOs, and put together structures and systems that I could use to understand the security posture of the company and manage it. And at that time, I've always been very active in the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. Right. And I wrote a book for them called Stepping Through the IS
right.
Program.
I have it on my shelf.
Program. Right. So
signed.
You probably have my earlier one too on audit. I had written that when I was in audit.
Your whole series are all signed.
It wasn't.
I tried to sell them on eBay, but I can't. Well, the signature makes them worth more.
Actually, it should. Yeah. But anyway, I think they're actually still selling that book. It was the first, one of the first of its kind, and so that's why I mention it, because that is kind of my gift to the community. And then Bear Stearns died, and I was no longer a CISO. So
that was quite a jolt. Huh?
Yeah. I was offered a position at JP Morgan, but it was so small compared to the architecture of the company's security that I was running at Bear, because they were so big. So 8 people had jobs at the managing director level that mapped to a CISO position at Bear Stearns. So there's not one person at a large company like that who has the bird's eye view, or at least not at that time. Yeah. And I decided I wanted to learn more about other places and take my time and decide where to move to. And I, on purpose, went into consulting so I could go, do a bunch of different projects at a bunch of different companies. And I did that for 5 years, a very long time, before I somehow got recruited back into the financial industry. And the way I got recruited back was there was this new position being created at Citigroup for cybersecurity enterprise risk. And it was in a department called Enterprise Risk Management. And there were plenty of people doing operational risk and other risk areas in that department, but the cybersecurity had become such a huge, big risk, and it wasn't really being properly covered by any of the other areas, not on the business side, not in the technology risk area. And the recognition on the part of John Davidson, who was the head of Enterprise Risk Management, that it really needed some special focus, really impressed me. And so I went to work for John and started to develop a cybersecurity risk management framework for Citi to use within its larger risk management function.
Oh, what an excellent job.
It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, John left within a year, and I had 4 bosses in 3 years. It didn't,
that happens.
Yes. But I love the work, and I have great staff that are still at Citi, but I ended up getting recruited again to do something similar at JP Morgan, which came back, and now, I had been at Bear Stearns.
You're like a recruiter's dream, right?
Well, except for the reception to the ideas at JP Morgan was also that it was absolutely needed, but the the pace of change that I was used to just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go back to consulting.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
these
what
are
I'm
all
doing now.
great firms that you work
Yeah.
with great teams, great leadership. So you've had incredible training.
Yes. Yes. That.
I mean, I know you're probably doing a lot of the training of others, but just being in those environments, you're around these
Yes.
really excellent senior leaders, and Wall Street, for all the criticism, there's some smart people there.
Right. Oh, yes, absolutely. Even the regulators, I mean, everybody's out to try to solve the cybersecurity problem. They're all bringing what they have in their own background to it. Training, I didn't mention, I actually developed a curriculum in system security engineering for Stevens Institute of
Right,
Technology,
right.
which another
We
shared
share a
interest,
connection there.
right, alumni. And that was also a great community to work with all of the academics who are really focused on the theory of how cybersecurity should be working within systems, right? And in the systems engineering program, especially how it fits in. It had been viewed as an utility, like a performance, like a utility as opposed to a feature of a system. And I spent a lot of time trying to understand the difference between a strong system and a system with a security feature. A login is a feature. It's not an add-on, right?
Right.
So things
Good
like
point.
that. So anyway, I diverse. But because you had mentioned the communities, I'm also thinking of the DoD partners that I taught at Stevens, because a lot of people from places like Lockheed and Northrop Grumman and Sandia, I think, was one of the places that I at least did a seminar. They all bring their own experience to it. And the great thing about consulting and teaching and, working with on materials like a book with ISACA is that you get the benefit of everyone's
You
different,
sure do.
absolute perspective. So that's a nice segue to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, bring us to the present. So you've written some software. You've got a little product that you're out working with some clients on. That's very, very exciting.
Yes, a common theme in
First, the name. Very cool name.
FrameCyber.
FrameCyber. It's a cool name.
Yes. Cybersecurity needs a framework
Yeah.
in order to understand it. That's something I always intuitively knew, but working in risk management became an absolute necessity. And in all of the places that I have been, there have been people who were building their own frameworks. Everybody's got spreadsheets. Everybody's got their own way of slicing and dicing data and presenting it, their favorite metrics, their ways of understanding cybersecurity. And unfortunately, those great spreadsheets are not easily transferable to the rest of the company to give the rest of the people who need this information the same view of the cybersecurity problem that the person working on it has. People don't see the underlying data.
Right.
Right? So I had always had the issue of making the cybersecurity profile visible as a consultant. And I, in the past, had done things like written little access databases and left them at the client so that they could see the assessment that I was doing and follow it up maybe in some kind of structured manner. And so when I came back to consulting, access data, I couldn't even get access running on my operating system anymore. And I was working with a startup bank that needed a lot of cybersecurity risk framework, and they wanted everything in the cloud, right? So I started investigating how to put my cybersecurity framework in the cloud. And I ended up writing software that I own, my intellectual property, that is I call it FrameCyber because it allows you to frame your cybersecurity risk management issues. It has things like your events, your internal events that happen to you, the external events that happen to other people, scenarios. People all do all these tabletops, and they unfortunately sometimes sit in spreadsheets and presentations, And they're revisited every year, but not in the methodical, data-driven way that you can do if they're all in the same database, right? So you take your events and issues and your assessments. You have to do so many assessments. In the financial industry, I don't have to tell the people in the financial industry because they've got a whole project on working with government to try to normalize all of the assessments, so they have to do many fewer of them. But they call it harmonization. But because you answer the same question from multiple regulators, and even in your own internal assessments that you do against your own policies, with the same set of controls, if you just had your control documents in a system and you could drag and drop them into the answer to your assessment question, that would save a lot of time and effort. And then you would actually find out with reporting the commonalities on your assessment results, which a lot of time, So I put all of that into one system, and now I'm marketing it as FrameCyber.
That's fantastic. Do you have a decent advisory board?
Oh, I have a great advisory board. The
Full
star of my
disclosure,
advisory board is sitting right here.
Jen asked me to be on the helper out, and of
Yes.
course I'm going to help my old
Yes.
friends. No, I think you got something pretty good.
Yeah, I have Andy Jankwith, the author of Security Metrics, on my advisory board. He's a fantastic contributor. I have the chief architect from JP Morgan's investment bank, a former chief architect. He now works at a startup, so he's a great software architect, and several others. And
You're
I'm
ready to go.
off
This
and
is
running.
good. You see yourself kind of looking at some initial clients to start banging the thing out, and then grow the
That's
usual
right.
sort of software
Yeah.
plan.
The idea is
That's
to test
exciting.
it on myself as I am consulting, as I use my own software. I understand, how it works and what the utility is. So I'm using it now in my engagements, and as I demonstrate it to my consulting clients and to others, like I still do training for ISACA. So and actually at Stevens, when I just gave a presentation there, and I used it as the demonstration of how the data within cybersecurity domain could be analyzed in a framework model. And so as I get more exposure for the product, I'm getting more interest in, go to my website, FrameCyber.com, and ask for a demo.
Well, it looks like you're having fun.
I'm having a great time, and I really appreciate talking about it. Thank you.
That's the whole idea. That's why we have you here. So as you make progress with your tool, you come back and show us, maybe do a demo, and you can show us what you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure, Ed.
We'll talk to you next time, and
Okay.
we will see you next time.